G'day YouTube, Max right here, and a little bit different kind of content from me in this video. I'm going to be reviewing a documentary I watched over the weekend, and it was absolutely amazing. I think it's an absolute must-watch for every American, and so I just felt compelled to do this. But please let me know in the comments if you like this type of content. Can always do more of it. So the documentary I watched was called The Plot Against the President, and I believe it's based on a book by Lee Smith. Now, beautiful part about this documentary, it's available for free on YouTube. So it's the first link in the description, and I just can't recommend enough that every single person watches this documentary. It's quite amazing. So I'll talk a little bit about the documentary, and then towards the end, I'll give you a little bit of extra information because at the end of the documentary, you're really left, it's like, how can this possibly have happened? Like, just how can it get to this stage, almost to the point where it's too fantastical to believe that there are this many co-conspirators involved? And I think I've got some information which I can share with you to help you understand that not only was this like possible, in fact, it's inevitable. It's the only way it could go. And it's absolutely inevitable that we arrived at this place. So the story of The Plot Against the President is it's an incredible documentary with lots of first-hand information. You hear from actual prosecutors, Devin Nunes, Congressperson Devin Nunes, and lots of other people with first-hand information. And what they were doing, so this is the last 4 years of the Russia hoax. It's like, you know, they're saying that the intelligence community, the FBI, the CIA, they all think that Adam Schiff's coming out on TV, etc., and saying we've got credible evidence that Trump has colluded with the Russians to steal the 2016 election, etc. And then Devin Nunes went ahead and said, oh, okay, let's investigate that. And they had some behind closed doors testimonies. I believe there was 65 people were witnesses, were interviewed under penalty of perjury. They were sworn in, and they had this whole process. But it was all behind closed doors. It was considered classified, and it was illegal to talk about. And now that it's all said and done, I guess they're able to talk about it. And what it really reveals is that the FBI, the CIA, and many of the other intelligence communities of the United States government have been weaponized. And they have been weaponized in two very important ways. One is to conceal the crimes of their co-conspirators. So if you're wondering why Hunter Biden and Joe Biden and these guys are not being prosecuted, Hunter Biden's laptop is not being looked at, why Hillary is not in jail, it is because these co-conspirators in the intelligence community and the FBI have been working to conceal those crimes, hide those crimes, and hide that evidence. And there's been a lot of perjury and things going on down that vein. Even news just came out in the last 24 hours about people lying under oath, FBI officials lying under oath when they were asked about Seth Rich. And they said, we don't have any documents on that. And that's not true. Documents have just come out in the last 24, 48 hours that the FBI did involve themselves in the Seth Rich investigation. A little bit of a sidetrack. This has nothing to do with the movie, but for those of you who don't know, a critical component of that whole conspiracy is that the Russians were the ones who hacked the DNC servers and got the emails that confirmed all the crimes that the DNC and Hillary had done. But there's never been any evidence put forward to that, right? In fact, one of the key components of the takeaways of the documentary is that all 65 witnesses throughout the whole experience were all asked the exact same question. Do you have any evidence whatsoever that there was collusion or any kind of working with the Trump campaign and the Russians? And all 65 witnesses under oath said no. And then the crazy thing is, I will get to that part in a little bit. Back to the Seth Rich story. So what actually happened, I think the leading argument, we don't have conclusive proof of this, but the leading belief system is it was a DNC staffer. It was a Bernie fan who was a DNC staffer who was working with the DNC, and he was annoyed at how Bernie was betrayed and cheated out of the nomination in 2016 by Hillary, and so he took the emails and gave them to WikiLeaks. But that goes against the narrative that it was the Russians that hacked the DNC. So just a little bit of a side story there about Seth Rich. So yeah, And I would say, here's probably the next major thing. I was familiar with a lot of the details, but the way it was put together and presented in just a very logical order, I wouldn't be surprised if like the producer or scriptwriter was actually a lawyer, because it was a very methodical argument with incredible witness testimony at exactly the right places and just chronologically told. It was just very well done. But one of the really important things that I learned, it's not a spoiler, it's about halfway through the documentary I got this, is that they said that if there's a closed door hearing and it's considered classified, and if you are in that meeting and you walk out and you tell the truth about what happened in the meeting, you can go to jail. It's a breach of classified information, and there's very serious consequences for doing that. But if you come out and stand in front of the media and lie and say the opposite of what happened inside, you have broken zero laws. There are zero consequences for lying to the American people. And so what you had during that period is Adam Schiff would come out from that meeting and stand in front of the media and lie to them openly. And we know all this now, as in the American citizen knows all this now, because after the IG report and everything else, we know what was said and we know that he lied. But for years, Adam Schiff would come out, lie through his teeth to the American people saying, well, I saw evidence, the evidence is in there, I can't tell you, it's classified, but I saw it, it's in there. And there is zero repercussion for that lie. But if somebody else came out and said, no, wait a minute, he's lying, there wasn't, boom, you've now betrayed the confidence of the classified information, and now the person who told the truth can get in trouble. So everything we heard for years about this coming out of Adam Schiff's mouth and all the other leakers and all that nonsense, all complete lies. And they knew it, and they knew they were protected by lying. That's the fascinating part. So I can't recommend this documentary enough. I think it's something that absolutely every single person should watch, American citizens especially, but even if you're not, I can almost guarantee the same thing is happening in your neck of the woods. These massive bloated bureaucracies they've been infiltrated, and people with not your best interests have been put in place, and they are co-conspirators, and their job is to hide the crimes of their fellow co-conspirators and make up and invent and prosecute anybody who wants to shine a light on them, punish them, reveal their secrets, reveal their betrayals. And as the documentary shows, they went after Roger Stone, they went after General Mike Flynn, they've gone after, is it Stephanopoulos or Papadopoulos? Sorry, I get those names confused. I think it's Papadopoulos. And there's just a slew of made-up nonsense crimes. And so what they do, it was a formula they used over and over again, including well before Trump was presidency, to harass other people. What they do is they charge you with a crime or accuse you of a crime and get you to come in and chat to the FBI, and then it's a crime to lie to the FBI. And so what they do, if you slip up and say, look, I didn't do the thing you're accusing me of, and the proof is I was over here on a rainy day with my friend Bob, and you were with your friend Bob on that day, but it didn't rain, you just committed perjury. Well, it's not quite perjury, it's a different crime. You've lied to the FBI, and now you can go to jail. And this is the kind of trap that they used to get people and get them on the hook. And when that failed, if that didn't work, they just lied. The FBI said, they said this, here I wrote it in my notes that they said this, and it was a lie, that's why we prosecuted them. But then it was found out later that they wrote that in their notes months later to create and invent a crime where none existed. So, I mean, this is really shady stuff. And it absolutely just, what's the word? It should shake to the foundations any belief or faith you have in any government bureaucracy. And so, which I think is a very important belief to shake because it is unwarranted. So I'll wrap that up there on the plot against the president, but now I want to share with you some very important information. I think it's just, to me, it's opening the door psychologically to accepting this fact that not just the first tier, not just the second tier, not just the third tier, but just levels upon levels upon levels of corrupt co-conspirators at the highest levels of management in the FBI, the CIA, the NSA, etc., etc., etc. They are all co-conspirators. They are all a cabal lying and protecting each other and trying to oust President Trump and trying to oust the handful of people that are true to the cause in Washington, D.C. And so that piece of information is this. You might have heard me on this channel say it, but I think it's so important to just open your mind. In 1954, it was 54 or 56, I think it was 54, Joe McCarthy launches the investigation. He believes that the State Department has got a handful of communist sympathizers, anti-American communists, have reached the highest levels of power in the State Department. And he goes about trying to get them out. Well, it turns out he got absolutely zero prosecutions for that. And there was a couple of people who quit their job and just left because they didn't want to be harassed by this and blah, blah, blah. Right? In the following years, just the media relentlessly harassed him, said he was, it was a witch trial. He's ruined these fine people's reputation with these false accusations. And he ended up going through an enormous amount of trauma and pain and eventually died or killed himself. I'm not sure if I'm getting that part right, within a handful of years of that situation. Okay, that's the story. That's what we're all taught at school. Fast forward, 1991. The Soviet Union collapses and a whole bunch of classified information, formally classified information, is made public. Within those documents that the Soviet government released, there are the names, there's the details of the communist spies they had in the State Department. Now, what the papers went on to say that McCarthy had grossly underestimated how many communists there were in the highest levels of government, and that many of the people that he had hired and brought on his team to prosecute and chase and expose the communists were in fact Soviet assets and communist sympathizers. Now think about this. If in 1954 these guys had no repercussions, there are so many communists at the highest levels of government that when McCarthy goes to pick random people to prosecute the Soviets, he ends up picking other anti-American communist Soviets, right? And they completely get away with it. Not one person punished, a couple of people quit their job. And by the way, the people that quit their job, each and every single one of them were named in the Russian documents as Russian spies, meaning it was true. And what was happening was he was investigating them. He had the help and his subordinates, but they were communist sympathizers. They would give the guys a heads up and say, hey, he's got a lot of information on you. Just quit and get out. He'll lose interest. We'll move on and you'll never be exposed. And that's exactly what happened. By the way, side note, one of those guys went to become dean at Berkeley, which you see Berkeley, which now hires radical communist professors to indoctrinate the children, and it is ground zero for Antifa and communist stupidity, right? A few side notes. But here's the big, big, big takeaway. If they got away with it, and they had that many people in really high levels in 1954, with no punishment, no repercussions, they completely got away with it. Half a century later, how many people do you think they've put at the highest levels of all the different three-letter organizations in the intelligence communities, in the FBI, in the DOJ, etc.? Trump ran on the position to drain the swamp in 2016. And to be fair, he's been largely unsuccessful at it. There's been a handful of people that needed to get exposed. Mitt Romney got exposed. We got McCain exposed. He was a former the Republican House lead. He quit. There was a whole bunch of people, and there's on the Republican side, right, that got exposed. But largely, we haven't been anywhere near the swamp draining that was needed. And why is that? There's a fantastic line by Donald Sutherland's character in Oliver Stone's JFK. One of the best movies ever watched, by the way. Make sure you watch Oliver Stone's JFK. But the line from him is that President Kennedy, JFK, he's got a quote here on the screen. He promised to splinter the CIA in 1,000 pieces and scatter it to the winds. And Donald Sutherland's character says he was unable to do that because of bureaucratic resistance. And so just because we vote a good person in, he's just one person, and you've got tens of thousands of bureaucrats along the way who are responsible for investigating, prosecuting, judges who need to give warrants, all of this high up class. And what happens is, as of 50 years ago, it went so corrupted and so bent that we were unable to get any prosecutions then. Think about the challenges of trying to get prosecutions now. Think about how many levels deep is corrupt in the FBI. How many levels deep from the top down in the CIA, in the NSA, that are corrupt and are co-conspirators, hiding evidence, not giving fair testimony, falsifying evidence. You name it, they're doing it. And this documentary does a phenomenal job of exposing where we are at the moment. Just how many people are involved, just how many three-letter agencies are involved. And it's just an absolute must-watch, guys. I can't say it enough. It's the first link in the description of this video. It's right here on YouTube for free. Please go ahead and watch it. I absolutely urge you. Take care, and I'll probably have some more crypto content tomorrow. See you then.